Something insane is happening in Ark Raiders at the moment, and as a designer, it's insanely interesting to me, and it should be to you as well. Ark Raiders is a PvPvE extraction shooter where you can play solo or in trios, and well, let's just say these are very different experiences at the moment. Boil it down, the general attitude and etiquette of solo compared to trios is wildly different. In trios, it is as you would expect. You spend a lot of your time killing bots, doing missions, getting loot so you can extract, and if you do come across anyone, you fight. Now there is some room for social play in there, maybe just a temporary truce or something like that, but it's not the focus. In solos, it's completely different. Throughout the first few days after launch, consensus reached critical mass, which was that if you are playing solo, you do missions and leave others be or join up. You don't shoot them. And if you don't adhere to that, you are a bad person or player.
Oh my god, that was such an asshole. That was the biggest. I'm so angry at that. That was so shitty.
This right there is what's interesting, because nothing apart from your squad size has changed in any meaningful way from solo to trio, but the entire player-to-player dynamic has. What this is an example of player governance, where enough players are vocal enough about their ideal way to play that it feels like for players outside of this circle that it's a hard rule or at least an implicit social contract. And this isn't new. The first example which comes to mind is Overwatch's 222 rule way back in the day before they had rule queue or restrictions on how many of each type of character you could have. I very distinctly remember the first message in any game I would play would be someone saying 222, and when someone inevitably picks the third or fourth or, let's face it, fifth DPS, they would be lambasted in the chat or on comms, even by other people who are also picking DPS. And this is without forgetting the fact that these players paid for the game and they want to play it a certain way, yet others make it very clear that if they do play how they want to play, then they are a bad player. Again, an example of player governance. Another few examples are players in WoW raids or dungeons taking it turns to roll for loot. Again, not a rule in the game, but a rule created by the player base. Or even in chess at a high level, if you are losing badly, you are expected to forfeit. Or even in something like hide and seek, where it's expected for everyone to take a turn at seeking, even if you don't want to. The point is, in any game where it is possible for players to have enough meaningfully different options which could affect the player experience of others, player governance rears its head. But let's go back to Ark Raiders. Why specifically Ark Raiders? Well, I could just parrot what Kokarnage said on one of his recent streams, but instead of that, I would just play a short clip here.
The game is designed so well with an enemy that is so easily able to lock you down and kill you in the right situations, and that is the Ark robots, that you really can get this us versus them.
Now this is particularly interesting because it was something I was curious about before Ark Raiders came out, especially as it's kind of the opposite of my experience playing another extraction shooter, Marathon, in technical tests. The AI and mission design is just too good. The fact that fighting the AI and performing the missions is engaging enough that players do not want to be interrupted when doing it, coupled with the fact that there are two distinct modes of play, has led to players attaching one rule for one mode and one rule for another, which is PvP for trios and PvE for solos. Another point which Ko stated is also very true as to why solo in particular was chosen as the PvP mode.
The amount of nice players in this game is stunning. Dude, it's 100% thanks to the solo queue. Yep, they knocked it out of the park with the solo queue. That puts you in the mindset to receive a diplomatic action. It's a night and day thing in terms of how susceptible that person will be to wanting to work together. If you're in a squad, if you're running with someone in Discord, if it's just you and your buddy, you know, anytime somebody says, hey, friendly, that's not a decision you make. That's a decision hey, what do you want to do? You want to kill this guy? You want to get this guy? You know, and the more the people are, the more of a thing it's become. And that barrier prevents a lot of that from happening.
So now we know the what and we know the why, but as a game designer, it's always good to ask whether this is actually good for the game or not. To answer that, let's look at a similar example I've mentioned already, going back to the 222 example with Overwatch and looking at whether or not the change to role queue has net benefits. So first off, the major positive is that there is a significant reduction in toxic communication, specifically regarding formations of teams. Now this is something which, despite there being some data around toxic communication being lessened and as Overwatch and Overwatch 2 lifespan has continued, I can't really verify this due to so many other factors at play, like the ability to disable chat, increased toxicity due to Overwatch 2 being free to play, the introduction of the defense matrix system which automates text and voice moderation. However, from thousands of hours and over 9 years of experience of playing Overwatch, I can say for certainty that this has decreased. Now, there are two negatives which spring to mind. One, which is something more tangible, which is increased queue times. Queue times at the end of Overwatch 1's life and throughout Overwatch 2's lives have been very publicly notorious for being really long, as really would be the case for any situation where you continuously segment the player base. Another negative is less tangible but most likely agreeable to you, in that role queue has reduced potential creativity, as synergies are much more cut off, decreasing more ways for players to play the game and interact with people. The reason why I'm making this comparison is because due to the very vocal sentiment of the player base of Ark Raiders, a change could very well be made to the game in order to quell this sentiment, such as changing how queuing works and thus segmenting the player base. Overall, I think any change to reduce this issue risks making the overall experience for the majority of the players potentially worse, which just leaves us with an opportunity to consider whether or not this is actually an issue at all. What I will say is that for a game to even be able to even have the ability to give players a sandbox to express such a wide social behavioral spectrum is insanely cool. And with any sandbox like it, I think that embracing it and potentially even encouraging this range of social behavior is the direction to go in as a player, which is odd. It's rare that I find myself actually and unironically saying that this is a player problem. But let's just look back at the hide and seek example. Now, if you're playing hide and seek and you really want to hide, but it's your turn to seek, there is just nothing stopping you from not seeking. You could either just stop playing the game, you could just put your foot down and say, no, I'm hiding, or just straight up hide even though there is no one seeking. Like, that is a thing you can do with free will, with of course the caveat and consequence of the response from the players around you. Same with picking Genji even though you already have a Widow, Tracer and Hanzo on the team. Like, sure, the Reinhardt is going to be mad, but at the same time it's your game, you do you. I think that this is a special game and a special circumstance where sometimes it is inevitable that if you want to play the game how you want to play it, so in Ark Raiders if you want to go around just PvPing in solo queue, then you are going to have to deal with people not being happy with that. And all of this, sure, it isn't a great feeling, but it is the game, and more importantly, it's the people in the game and how they've decided to self-govern. Well, there we are. Thank you for watching. I've never really touched the social side of game design before on the Game Design Library channel, but I was having a debate very similar to this with my friend who also plays last night, and I thought this could be a really interesting topic to archive on the channel. If you enjoyed, then please leave a like so others can find the video, and don't forget to subscribe if you are interested in other game design related content, and keep on keeping on.